I was looking at the state of the agency screen earlier today, and we talked about competition. And I think competition is such an interesting thing. I was sitting in with my new friend Ryan over there from Omla. If you haven't had a chance to meet him, you're in for a treat when you do. But we were talking about talent and culture, and he did everything but I think stand in front of 72 and Sunny and with a picket sign saying how much the next strategy for not letting him take his talent was no pants Tuesdays and I think pot brownie Fridays. And I think it just brought up an interesting point that we think about competition and we forget that we compete against ourselves. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about today is I think we're seeing a lack of kind of looking at tomorrow's creative leaders. And we can't forget that we run businesses. We do a great job of coming up with really strong strategies for work. And I think we forgot, because we're competing against ourselves for talent, that all these people came in and took our talent, and they took clients. Management consultants that sat on the side and watched us fight amongst ourselves and started jumping in and cherry-picking things. And it's because we didn't run great businesses. And I think today I want to talk about how we have to look at that, I think, in a different way. So one of those key things, I've running agencies for 20 years. I've had my own personal opinion of what I've seen and how things work. But now I get the luxury of seeing data that tells us these things. We're doing this really cool project with the 4As. I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with them. They're the largest association in our industry. And with them, they're launching all these initiatives around learning and development and training and how to make our people smarter at what we do, but also smarter at the agency business. And we actually help them by giving them some predictive data of where are the key trends that are going on within agencies. And how do we use that information to help us run better businesses and teach people what's important, not just about the work, but what goes on in a company. And so this little chart just kind of gives you an idea of what all the key indicators are that a Harvard Business Review or the McKinseys of the world look at organizational health and how do you drive the growth of a company. And one of the things that we've been seeing is leadership is strongly trending down within agencies. And we run these assessments that help us understand the perception of people within the agencies and what they believe leadership means and how it works. And do they think they have great leadership in the company? And because we're seeing this downward trend, I think it's been related to a couple key things. One is how many people here believe they have the best leadership teams in their city, in their company? Just give me a raise of your hand. You think of the best leadership team in your city out of any company, right? So it's a small amount of people that are saying that. And more importantly, what's happening is staff really are saying the same thing, that their perception is they don't really understand what leadership is doing. Are they running a business? What does that mean? They're sitting in these client meetings and they're sitting behind closed doors. And the reason that this is important is there's a direct correlation between more than 70% of the participants we're seeing within agencies don't really understand our business. So we're doing a great job of teaching them specific skill sets, but we're not teaching them what drives things. And in that screen I showed before, there's so many different key things that are going on, and we forget those. And that's why people came in and ate our lunch, because we missed and lost sight of that. We spent so much time on the work. And I think what's important is how do we actually take that and look at it and say, wow, we have a leadership issue. If we don't run good businesses, we're great at doing work, and we have people who don't understand, there's this massive gap between the two. And how can we bridge that gap and bring those two things together so that way if we are sitting in there and we are fighting each other for talent, how do we make sure that we're giving them the right skills in terms of how we run and drive our business? And I think we lose sight of that a lot. So I think today, we looked at some of the key terms that are coming back from those surveys, and one of them, especially as a key part of this, is transparency, right? And transparency, we know equals transformation. I think most people can understand that, but it's all about honesty, and I think we don't understand what transparency really means. And the more honest that we can be with people in the front, and not everyone needs to know every single detail about the organization, but letting them understand what is going on in a way that they can understand it is critical. This is a constant term we keep seeing pop up is diversity, and I think I have this belief around go beyond superficial diversity. And I think a lot of the surveys that are coming back is people are saying, we understand that gender and race is a big issue, and listen, there's some people doing some dumb shit that makes no sense. But if you think beyond cultural relevance, and you think about skill sets, I love this periodic table idea that I saw from earlier on. But if you look at people from that perspective and make sure that you're casting the right teams, if you look at some of the best businesses in the world, if you look at the Apples and the IBMs, those companies, they do a fantastic job of casting the right people diversity-wise across the organization deeper than just those two things that we pay attention to. So I think we've got to look a little bit deeper into that and use the things that we have. There's a lot of information that will help us do that. I think if people spend so much time on predicting what's going on in the future, like what are our annual goals? How are we going about this? And I think what we're seeing is how can you actually think a little bit more short term? Because the reality is, your clients, we have no idea how long they're going to stay. They may sign these contracts, but we have no clue if they're going to stick to those contracts, and we get in these battles. And so to me, it's coming down to how do we pay attention to what's going on in front of us in a weekly, a monthly, maximum quarterly basis. And what that does, it keeps you more connected real time to what's going on, and it helps you shift those businesses as the clients and things are shifting. The other thing we're seeing that keeps popping up is that people are actually looking for more high touch. So we hear about all these employee engagement things that are going on, and people don't want emails anymore. It's important, I think we're trying to be efficient, but the reality check is that we forget that we're in the people business. And that's not just about the staff that's in the organization, that's about the vendors that we work with, that's the customers we work with, those are the people that work within the organization, and they need high touch. And you can actually get sometimes more things done faster over a phone call. But we can't forget that that's where we are. We're dealing with emotions, we're dealing with emotional people. How do we then use that to our advantage? We can't rely on email and technology all the time. And this is a huge trend. We're seeing a lot of information coming back. The last thing that we're seeing in there is that people don't really understand their numbers. I've sat with many creative directors or co-founders of companies, and they have no clue what's driving the way the company is actually running. And I'm not only talking about profit, I'm talking about lead generation. How are they driving in customers or awareness? How are they driving in talent pools that can continually bring in great people? There's so many number metrics that we forget about, and what we're seeing is the staff are actually wanting to understand this more, which is telling me that they're thirsty for it. We're just not giving it to them. So I think one of those keys that we have to focus on, how do we give them those things a little bit closer and pay attention to it. One of the last points is I talk about this word like business smarts a lot, because I think we're doing a great job at a creative business, and we can't forget that we are running a business. And the more that we can understand how that's working, it gives us a competitive advantage. And it will stop people from coming in and taking our talent and taking our clients and treat it just like any other business typically would. We can't lose sight that that's actually what we're doing on a daily basis. So I have a really short time. I have about a minute left for any questions. I know I cruised through that stuff, but I think I'm open to taking any thoughts from it. Yes?
Can you explain how you derived these? What was the data you were pulling from? What was the pool?
Pool's about a few thousand agencies, and we work directly with the 4As and Ad Forum. We ask questions that are typically normal organizational health questions, but we contextualize it. So we're asking about 25 questions, that chart that we showed earlier, and we give people an understanding of what's really good and what's really bad. And we allow them to do is actually tell us why they gave it that grade. So we go from an A to F scale. And what it does, it gives you a range of what they're really feeling, and also helping them understand what is great sales in an organization really mean. And more importantly, we let them tell us what their ideal scenario is. So a lot of the terms that I'm bringing up in here are key words that keep coming back over and over and over again in different sections as to what they want to know and why they don't like what they're seeing. So you have to balance that whole emotional side of data and what people are feeling on top of hard metrics and what's driving the performance of the company or the performance of people. Yep. Any other questions?
Yep. Actually out of time. But
All right.
George is going to be around, right?
Thank you guys. Yes, I'm around.
So grab him for questions.
Thank you.